to Bruce.
Okay, you're live.
Awesome. Welcome. I'd like to call to order a special city council meeting for April 1st, 2021. Welcome to April. Roll call, Sylvia.
Mayor Mays.
Here.
Council President Rosner.
Here.
Councilor Browse.
Here.
Councilor Griffin.
Here.
Councilor Garland.
Here.
Councilor Scott.
Here.
And Councilor Young is absent.
Yeah, she'll hopefully be able to join us in the work session, but she had a unexpected thing, so she's excused. Welcome. Odd for us to get together on a Thursday. Appreciate everyone working to make it happen. We have one item for consideration, resolution 2021-016, appointing city manager pro tem. Joe or Josh?
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'll get started and Josh can fill in any gaps. The staff report and resolution was put together through a combination of Josh and I. It essentially moves forward the recommendation that the council had made in the last work session in terms of the transition for my departure in May. The resolution is a two-step process. It would appoint or elevate Kristen Schweitzer, the Community Services Director. I think we post-dated it to the 25th of March. She would become the Assistant City Manager in my last weeks with the city and work side by side with me. And then when I depart in May, she would then elevate to the City Manager Pro Tem position, which is in the charter. So this is official action that the council needs to take to make those things happen. Josh, am I missing anything from your perspective that we need to highlight?
Nothing significant other than just to let council know that we did incorporate all the things we talked about previously. So we don't have fixed dates for the transition to city manager pro tem or the end of the duration of city manager pro tem. Those are based on whenever it is that Joe leaves and whenever it is that the new person is hired. And then we also provide an increase in compensation during the entire period of interim assistant city manager and city manager pro tem.
And Josh, just to be clear for those that are listening, Joe's contract allows us to have him stay for 60 days for a transition. And the clauses that you just mentioned are just to give us flexibility. If Joe decides to leave a little bit early, we don't have to go back and do another resolution, depending on how quickly we get transitioned.
Exactly. The contract allows for council to agree for Joe to leave after fewer than 60 days. So if you do reach some sort of agreement like that, depending on how the transition goes, you won't have to redo this resolution.
Excellent. Thanks for the clarification.
Any questions? Kristen, do you have any questions about the resolution?
No questions from me. Thank you.
Awesome. Anyone else on council with questions? Comments on it? Or a motion?
I will just
make a motion. Was there a comment?
Well, just a quick comment.
Okay.
And then I would just say, I'm Joe, I'm excited for you in this new opportunity. You'll be missed. And I just want to say that again. Done a great job for the city over the last, how many years? 8 years?
It'll be 9 years, or it would have been 9 years in June. So almost 9 years.
Okay, well, maybe we can stretch it to 9. But but no, I appreciate you all you've done for the city and done for me as I transitioned becoming a council member for the first time. So thank you very much. And then I'm also very excited to have Kristen step in and fill your shoes and take the role of interim city manager for a while here. So thank you, Kristen, for volunteering for that. Now, Russell, I'm done.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve resolution 2021-016, appointing city manager pro tem.
Second.
Thanks. Moved by Russell, seconded by Renee. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none. All in favor of approving resolution 20-016, appointing city manager pro tem, say aye.
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 Opposed? Excellent. Motion carries. That is the 5-minute city council meeting. So we are going to adjourn and leave and then go to a work session to talk about next steps. So we are adjourned.
Awesome.
Brad, did we have a separate
Do we
meeting,
have a separate meeting?
or are we just going to?
No, I just kept it as one, so I
Okay.
guess I didn't realize it was two separate meetings, so.
I imagine we can just roll with it. So we are, we'll convene, call to order our work session to discuss city manager recruitment firm proposals. Joe.
Yes,
And-
Mr. Mayor and Council, I have shared 5 different proposals that we have received this week from various firms and organizations that do city manager recruitments. Hopefully, council members had a chance to at least review those, at least initially. The last one came in today. In addition to the actual proposals that I shared with council, I did a quick 1-page summary that I sent out early this afternoon that kind of summarizes kind of the major points in terms of timeline that the proposals outline. I wanted to highlight city manager recruitments in Oregon within the last 2 years for each firm. I will say, as a number of the proposals contained information about recruitments more than 2 years ago, but I focused on the last 2 years. That summary provides a range of the estimated costs in each proposal. And then the fourth and final item that I highlighted, whether or not they guarantee at all in their proposal. So that guarantee is the 3 that do have guarantees. If you hire someone through their process and that person resigns or is terminated within 1 year of the appointment, they basically will do the process again. And that's pretty standard among recruitment firms. So a lot of information that was shared over the last few days. This is really, council discussion, and we'll take any direction you want to move this process forward. So these all came together pretty quick. I contacted all these companies last Friday. So here we are less than a week later, and we've got 5 different proposals already. So
Yeah.
With that, I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
Thanks, Joe. My suggestion is potentially we whittle it down to 2 or 3 and then have 2 or 3 volunteers on council reach out to references and the firms themselves, and then report back Tuesday, if possible, at our city council meeting. That's just my thought.
I like that idea.
Because certainly hearing from both cities that have hired these firms and candidates that have worked with these firms will give great insight. And then certainly having conversation with the primary contact with the firm as well should really be beneficial. Other thoughts on that kind of approach?
I like that approach. I think that works well.
As we go along, can we ask questions about some of the proposals? And
Yeah.
Obviously we can, right? So
Absolutely. So which one we like to chat about first? What did folks think of? Well, I'll just go from Joe's list. The review, Kaufman. What did you think of the proposal? What'd you like? What'd you not like? What's your overall impression?
It's interesting. I don't remember that one specifically, but I remember when I was looking at them, I was not impressed with Novak Consulting Group. But I didn't take notes. I just remember seeing some things that kind of gave me red flags. But but the rest, there's nothing that really stood out on the rest of them that I liked or didn't like. Well, nice to put that back. Jensen Strategies, I liked the fact that it was an Oregon-based company.
Along with that, Prothman is based in the Northwest. They're out of Issaquah. So that, I think that's what I read in there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know,
Prothman is out of Washington. They do a lot of Washington recruitments, fair amount in Oregon. They've been around for many, many years, easily 10 plus years.
Oh, I do have
And
questions.
Novak, sorry, just to jump in, Novak did have, their recruiter is Oregon-based.
Yes.
If that matters to anybody, I think a lot of this process will probably be done through some remote work. I don't know what our thoughts are, how much of this we want to do in person, some, all, none. I don't know, thoughts on how we would want to proceed with this.
I think for finalists, I'd like to do it in person. I think that's important because they're going to be here for a long time potentially. But going back to the out of state versus in state, maybe a question for the group. Do we want to do a national search? Because one thing, and I was just briefly able to go through these, but we might want to consider at least having one firm that has a good track record of doing national searches, and then maybe couple that with some firms that are local here in Oregon. But that's a question, do we want to focus on Oregon or do we want to do a national search?
Well, I think we'll be attractive to two kind of buckets of candidates. City managers, city administrators of smaller communities, smaller than us, that want to get to a bigger, which is a normal career path. And then fairly involved assistant city managers from larger towns that want to become a city manager.
Because I look at it this way on that subject is if just in general broad strokes, if you hire someone who has a lot of experience in Oregon, that's great. They have a lot of experience in Oregon. You bring in someone who maybe has a lot of experience in a different state, they might bring additional ideas, concepts, different ways of approaching things that maybe we haven't traditionally done in Oregon. So, there's good and bad to both strategies. I'm just thinking about it at this point in terms of how broad do we want to reach? How far out do we want to go?
We're kind of on the bubble when it comes to, I think, from the national approach, but I would rather err on the casting the wider net. But you want to have someone with good experience in state. In looking at the recent, so Prothman is Northwest, been here a long time, steady Eddie firm. SGR, as you remember, that's the firm that we work with goal setting. Different people within the firm, but that's that company. They've worked, with medium-sized Oregon towns in Oregon, and have a pretty broad history in a lot of states. Novak, they're a player in Oregon because they hired someone who's been doing recruiting in Oregon for many, many years. In fact, their primary manager at Novak was with the firm that we used in hiring Joe 9 years ago. And they've done a lot in Washington County and TriMet area, the metro area. LCOG, generally small towns. They took over this from League of Oregon Cities a little over a year ago. So directly in their wheelhouse, it's a shorter list, but they've done it they know a lot of folks in Oregon. Jensen, small towns. They're all good firms, but
Yeah, so I would jump in maybe with my first impressions on a couple of those. Is the LCOG one, I found their proposal to be thin, lacking and lacking in experience, and lacking in detail, and fairly underwhelming overall. I liked a few of the other ones as well. I mean, it seems like most of them have at least a Pacific Northwest, if not a specific Oregon base, or at least some experience in this area. There's Novak has a lot of good experience with cities right here within our county and within our area here. So I think that certainly works as a plus to them as well. I guess I would have a question for Joe, if he's willing to talk a little bit about this on SGR. I mean, we obviously have some experience as a council with SGR from a goal setting standpoint, but Joe, having gone through a recruitment process on the other side of the coin with them, would you be willing to provide maybe a little feedback on your impressions of, as a candidate, how that how that went?
I think overall it went okay. I've been through a number of recruitments. I was mentioning this to the mayor in our daily check-in earlier today. One of the things that was a little less positive in my experience is that most of the recruitments that I've gone through in my career, the recruiter, you actually have at least relationship during the process, because these processes can take some time. And with SGR and Tigard, I never really had an opportunity to speak directly to the recruiter. The recruiter was a East Coast based former city manager, and all the communication was via email. Now the responsiveness and the answers to my questions via email were quick and concise and thorough, but it was a little impersonal compared to others as a candidate. That's just an observation. Novak, I've never gone through a Novak recruitment, but as the mayor alluded, one of the primary staff people that went from the firm that did Sherwood 9 years ago, I've been through a number of recruitments when she was with Waldron, that firm, and a much different kind of personal experience on the phone, quite honestly, throughout the whole process. And it was more personal. So from a candidate standpoint, I like that personal. These are big decisions for cities to make, but these are big decisions for candidates to make. And I think that opportunity to talk to the recruiter through the process is really valuable. So that's the only kind of observation I had. I think whoever you are looking at narrowing it down to, as the mayor said, I think having a conversation with the city and the council about their experience with the recruiter is really critical. You got to have someone, and you guys all know this, that is a good fit, that feels like that they understand what the council is looking for, that skill set in terms of your priorities and the type of leadership style you're looking for. And this is all about fit for you folks. So taking the time to take that extra step in calling references and talking to some of the cities that have used these firms is really critical before making a final decision, in my opinion. Going back to the question that Councilor Rosner said about a national search, if you're going to at least cast a wider net, SGR and Novak are going to be your strongest recruiters because they have a national presence. SGR is building their Pacific Northwest business, and that's, I think, going to continue to improve and expand. That's why they hired the person from Waldron, is to do a better job in the Northwest. Those are kind of my answers, Councilor Garland. I don't know if that helps or not, but.
Yep, very much. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that.
Can I ask a question about the guarantee column? I noticed that Novak, the one we were just talking about, there's no mention of a guarantee in their proposal. Do you think that's something they do not do? Or is that something we could require?
I'm sure it's just an oversight on both those.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily want to go back and ask the question until you guys had a conversation and about how important that is. I think it was probably an oversight, especially on Novak. If they're doing this nationally, that's kind of standard for the business.
Yeah. Well, that's what I thought when I was reading the parts of the proposals, and I didn't find it in there either. And I thought, well, maybe they don't do that. But then they did, they did Beaverton, Lake Oswego, Hillsborough. Seems like those cities would we're not going to even talk to you unless we get some kind of a guarantee. But
yeah,
they're big fish.
Yeah. My first impression is if we narrowed it down to 3 to do more follow-up, because of the experience that our neighbors have had with SGR and Novak, I would put them on a finalist list to do some more due diligence, and then select either Prothman or Jensen. Jensen has much deeper ties with cities of Oregon, smaller cities. Certainly their timeline in my book in my world is out of whack, but it's just a suggestion, doesn't mean that's what they would go with.
I agree.
Prothman has or you go with Prothman, they do a lot more in Washington State, but they've been doing it a lot longer. So that's my off the cuff.
I would definitely support the first 2, and I agree with you. I think the third choice would come down to one of those 2. So I agree with that.
Yeah. And then, like with SGR, very important to talk to the mayor and another person on council with Tigard, and then the person that was hired, and because I have some insight, also their HR manager who was very involved in the process. Novak, we should talk to, I would talk to a few of them. Hillsborough's done a tremendous amount of work with them, but they're also they're kind of in a different bucket versus us, versus a Lake Oswego or a Newburgh. So I want to get some different perspectives there. Other thoughts? So Kim, welcome. We're trying to one idea is to narrow the list from 5 to 2 or 3, and then have some volunteers on council to reach out to cities that have used the firms, as well as the people that they ended up hiring, to get their perspective on the process, working with them, and then also to then the third front, talk directly with the companies, and if it's possible, by Tuesday, and report back. That might be too fast, but just to help us get more information if we narrow the list down a bit.
I agree with the suggestion of your first 2 picks, Keith, due to their experience. And I agree that the other 2, I guess I would lean more toward Jensen, just because they have more of a footprint in Oregon. If we're still looking at narrowing it down to 3.
Yeah, as long as that date is not August 23rd.
Yeah, they say they literally, if you look at if you read the proposal, it was just just a suggestion. If they've got if their plate is fairly full when we talk with them, it says that is just it needs to be, then that's something we have to take into account.
I'm trying to skim through these. There's one of them that is involved currently with, was it Gresham or Forest Grove? Does anybody recall who that was? Which of these companies it was?
Gresham is back.
Yeah,
Novak?
Novak.
Okay.
Novak.
Presumab-
Novak is doing Beaverton, Gresham, and Lake Oswego.
Yeah, they just did Lake Oswego, right?
Okay.
And Josh, Novak was also doing city attorney, is that right?
Yeah, so they did Lake Oswego city manager a little while back, but they just finished up Lake Oswego city attorney.
Yeah. So that's an indication that that Lake Oswego was happy with the city manager process, and they went back to him for city attorney.
Right. I was just thinking that.
Yeah, the reason I asked that is I just wanted to make sure that they had the capacity to also handle ours if they're currently working several others, and making sure that their timeline would be realistic. I mean, it's incumbent on them to prove that they can meet, what their estimate is. But I guess that was just my concern, is people who had too many going all at once. But that's up to them to decide that they can do that or not. I noticed on Jensen Strategies, one of their, I believe the title, I don't recall, is associate. What is it here? Sorry, I'm trying to get through all of them. The senior associate was a former assistant city manager at Hillsborough.
Correct.
So that that to me is a kind of a nice to have as well. Somebody who's fairly familiar with the role of city manager. It seems like at least a plus.
Yep. Yeah.
So Councilor Garland, the mayor is right. Eric Jensen, who started this firm a number of years ago. I worked with Eric when I lived in Hillsborough and was involved with their 2020 vision. He understands local government. He's well known in Oregon city manager circles. He's very active at the League of Oregon OCCMA, and if you were to protect or potentially pick Jensen Strategies, you would certainly have a good connection to Oregon managers. He just doesn't. His firm doesn't have the national scope that the other two have. And I would say, just if you're leaning between Prothman and Jensen, Jensen's going to know Oregon better than Prothman. Prothman's more of a Washington. They'll do a good job, but they're more Washington based.
And if we've got the other covered with, Novak and SGR covering national, perhaps it might be in our best interest to have somebody who specializes locally in Jensen. Just a thought.
Yeah.
And then the other question you raised or concern about Novak and Beaverton and Gresham. Beaverton and Gresham city manager recruitments, they're getting close to select finalists to interview, and they'll probably be wrapping that up in the next few weeks. And by the time they would really start with Sherwood, that would be behind them.
That's helpful. Thanks, Joe.
Kim?
Oh, I was just curious. Did we find out who did our last recruitment?
It was the manager of Novak.
Yeah, so as Heather Gantz, who's in the proposal, Heather used to be with a firm called Waldron and Associates, and she left and was recruited actually away from Waldron by Novak a couple of years ago, and I've done a number of recruitments with Heather personally, and she definitely has that personal touch that I didn't get in my Tigood experience with SGR, but that's just one experience. So.
Yeah, when we had a good group of finalists 9 years ago, but after that group of finalists, for whatever reason, that cycle, there was not a lot of other candidates. So, I mean, I'm for naming Novak as a finalist, but I will specifically kind of ask, so what happened, that year, and what was if she recalls, just kind of I'll be curious. But I've had just short conversations with the mayors of a couple of towns that SGR and Novak have used, and I think it's a good idea to have them as, like a better word, part of the three for us to do more due diligence on from their short conversations I had with them. I didn't call anybody about Jensen or Prothman yet, just because they weren't in my backyard and and I didn't have their cell phone number on my phone with a relationship. So. Other thoughts? Who is interested in reaching out and learning more about the experiences the cities have had with these firms and with the firms themselves?
Well, I don't teach Friday and Monday, so that's the 2 days before we meet, and I can certainly make a lot of phone calls, but if somebody's dying to do it, I mean, I can do it. I'll help.
I can help if you want to divide and conquer.
And in some cases, if you can even doing them together, especially when you're talking to the recruiters themselves, to both get the perspective, I think would be good.
That's a great suggestion, Mr. Mayor. I think all the contact information is in those proposals. So, and if you have time Friday or Monday to do that, they're pretty responsive.
Yeah. I think it's important to ask, if these firms are ever hired by city managers to find them jobs. I don't think that's the case with any of these firms, but it's an important question to ask. I actually know of another firm that actually does play both sides of the street.
I think another good question is, some of these firms maintain recognized jobs boards that have a lot of visibilities, and to talk to them about that, or in other words, how do they go out and recruit candidates, and what's the pipelines that they use?
Yep. And do they, maintain relationships with folks that they've recruited and placed or not? We don't want to know just the good stuff about a candidate. We also want to know the warts.
I think there was at least one of the prospective companies, and possibly two, who I think did specifically call it out. And I apologize, I don't remember their names, but they had specifically said that they do have contacts and basically headhunters who know people who are out there who maybe aren't actively looking for this work, and those are potentially, I think it was SGR maybe said that said that those are the people you want, rather than perhaps the people that are coming looking for work. And in no offense to anybody who's potentially seeking out this position, we would want to talk to them as well, but there's some diamonds in the rough that maybe aren't actively looking and are very successful in the roles they're in, and just need a little nudge, so.
Well said.
Exactly. Go, sorry, Tim, you're saying?
Oh, I just said, well said. Sean's absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, part of my plan once we pick a firm is to also do that, almost check my own Rolodex and reach out to folks that might not be thinking about it, but put the job on their radar and urge them to consider it. And do a little selling direct, just to see. Because somebody's comfortable, they got their head down, they're in the trying to get on the other side of this pandemic, and they're not even looking, but it's like, oh, I think that's very good.
And Joe, you have, you indicated last week that, or whenever our last meeting was, that you had maybe had some people contact you, some people within the state.
Oh yeah, I've been contacted by 5 different folks now already.
So without naming names, do they generally fall in the small manager, bigger assistant city manager type of role? Is that pretty logical?
Yeah, actually, I think Mayor Mays hit it on the head. You're gonna get applicants who are working in smaller communities that are ready to take the next step up in their career. Remember when I came here, you know, I was managing a city of 10,000 people and 50 FTE. You know, Sherwood's 20,000 and 125. So you're going to naturally, this position will be attractive to those type of individuals. And then you're going to get, as the mayor said, people that are assistant city managers in larger communities that are ready to be a city manager and may bring a lot to the table. And you're going to get both, in my opinion. And I've been contacted by both so far.
Okay.
Is there a third counselor that wants to join in the, you know, in the vetting? We can always volunteer later, but right now, no one's.
I think Kim put her hand up. You're muted.
Of course I'm muted, but I'm muted 'cause I'm half numb too. I can help. It's not my wheelhouse, so it's all kind of new to me. So I'll get with Russell and Tim and make a game plan.
Okay.
Cool.
If the three
Awesome.
of you have questions that I can help or Josh can help before you dive in, let us know.
Yeah, they could even join in on calls if you do Zooms or Teams. Since Tim is, prefers Teams.
Oh, we're definitely going to do it on Zoom then. Yeah, that's how it's going to work.
So other things that you want asked in the next few days by our subgroup of council. And do we generally agree that it's SGR, Novak, and Jensen who we'd like them to reach out to? And
I think
their
so.
references.
Yep, that's the direction I'm inclined to go.
Sounds good to me. And I would suggest if you do have additional questions or that you want to ask, send those all to Joe, and Joe can compile them and send to us, just so we don't run afoul of public meeting law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
You know, I glanced over some of the, per hour, per trip, per meeting expenses, but I didn't really do a deep dive in that. I don't know if there's that much of a difference between, the three of them. I didn't really notice that one was way higher than the others, but that's something we could look at is when they come, do they show up with 4 people and it's $800 a trip or something? So we have to maybe think about that.
Yeah, they're all pretty comparable from a rough comparison. I mean, you have a base fee that basically does differ, but they're all on the three that you're focused on are all in the same ballpark. And
Yeah, I thought so.
25 to 28,000 ballpark.
Yeah. Yep.
Plus
And
expenses.
these folks compete against each other all the time. I mean, at least recently, these are the firms that are trying to do this kind of work for cities in Oregon. So
I think it seems like that between the three that we've chosen, we're going to get a quality firm. So I'm pretty happy with this selection. I was fairly impressed by the candidates who applied.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. I don't think we can go wrong with any of them, but I think we just need to get the one that's the best fit for us as a group. So, all right. Anything else for the good of the order? Otherwise, we'll let everyone go for the day.
I definitely appreciate everyone taking time out to do this so quickly and to kind of keep this process moving forward. It's going very quickly and efficiently, and I appreciate that. That's not always the case in other cities. So,
and since we got so much of our talent base also on board joining us on mute, if anybody else, Jeff, Craig, Christina, Sylvia, Brad, Julia, Josh, Kristen, have questions that you'd like Kim, Russell, and Tim to kind of dive in and vetting these three, please do send those ideas, topics, suggestions to Joe as well. Would certainly be appreciated. with that, we're gonna let you all go. We're gonna be adjourned.
Fantastic.
Okay.